Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Hannah Quinn Mulligan. Coming up on the show this week, the Irish Natura and Hill Farmers Association have high hopes that the next Common Agricultural Policy budget will better suit hill farmers.
There is an opportunity there, maybe to look again at the commonage framework plans to reduce any of the restrictions that are on farmers in those areas and allow them the freedom to farm and evolve, the same as farming is evolving in other parts of the country.
And with residues of the pesticide MCPA found in 80% of drinking water across the country, farmers in Timoleague have taken a proactive approach to water testing.
There's water quality issues all over the country, but locally for them, agriculture is getting the blame for some of the issues in the local bays and stuff. We had some open meetings and some of the farmers were like, that's fine, let's put some numbers on it. This might either back us or blame us, but let's put some numbers and see what's actually happening.
But first, there's been a furious backlash from farm organisations to proposed 5% cuts in the next Common Agricultural Policy budget. However, Commissioner for Agriculture Phil Hogan told me last week in Brussels that member states need to cough up the cash if they want to plug the €12 billion funding gap that will be left by Brexit. And he wasn't afraid to name the countries that other member states should be encouraging to cough up.
Well, in the budget negotiations, of course, you have to have the agreement of all the 27 member states. And the countries that are reluctant to agree more money for agriculture or for any of our EU budget programmes at the moment are Austria, Finland, Sweden, Denmark and the Netherlands. So if we want more money in the EU budget, we have to convince them to supply more money for the budget. And this is where the political negotiation will be over the next year. So if we are going to meet the requirements of our budget because of Brexit, which is 12 billion less, and if some member states want to spend more money on security, defence and migration, clearly the big programmes like agriculture are going to suffer initially in the proposal. But as I say, it's a proposal and it's up to the member states to decide their political priorities, and I hope that they will agree that they can provide some additional funds at the end of the budgetary process for agriculture.
We are here in Brussels and obviously heard a lot from different journalists in different countries talking about the environmental schemes and what's important to them. I mean, outside of the environmental schemes, what are the regulations going to be for member states in their proposals? Is there anything they should be aware of?
All that we're looking for is that the objective of the CAP on the environment and climate is met. We are allowing then as much flexibility as possible about how member states wish to achieve that.
And we touched upon the front-loading of payments, I know, and you said it's going to be up to member states about how much it's going to be per hectare. But I mean, if the proposal from a member state has to be accepted and approved by the Commission, then there must be a figure in mind.
No, we haven't put this as a specific objective in our requirement in the CAP plan, but I would have thought that it was very important that we protect the small and medium-sized farmer as far as possible at a time when we're under budgetary pressure. These are the farmers that we need for not just for providing vitality for our rural areas, providing food production for our many processing plants and cooperatives in Ireland, but also from a point of view of implementing policies in relation to the environment. So it's a win-win situation for member states to be able to protect the income of our small and medium-sized farmers and our young farmers.
You've spoken very passionately about young farmers and the need to improve the opportunities for young farmers out there, but thinking about the current tranche of young farmers and especially the tranche of forgotten farmers in Ireland, were you disappointed that with the change to omnibus regulations that came in, that they weren't made a provision for back in your home country?
This is the first time that it will be a requirement of any member state to get approval for their plans on agriculture to include their strategy for generational renewal. It has never happened before. And we have certainly learned a lot from the proposals of Macron and Firma, who put together an excellent policy document some months ago. And this has given us a number of good ideas, which we have now implemented and included in the legislative proposal that I have introduced last week.
So could that give some hope then to the tranche of forgotten farmers back in Ireland?
Well, that again is a matter for the member state. They now have the flexibility to do so if they wish.
And last question, there's been some speculation from the ICMSA that S&P is going to be sold from intervention twice a month instead of...
Well, we have sold 70,000 tonnes of skim milk powder in the last 3 months. It hasn't made a major impact on the dairy price, which was a worry that was expressed by the ICNSA over the last 6 months. So I think that it shows that my strategy in relation to storage of skim milk powder to protect farm incomes in 2015 and the sale of the product out of storage now in 2018 is working well on behalf of the farmer.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Hill farming is often described as one of the hardest types of farming, with difficult land conditions and low profit margins. The Irish Natura Hill Farmers Association, INHFA, had their AGM last week in Sligo, where our news editor Amy Ford spoke to Joe Condon, the association's policy officer, about what their hopes for the next Common Agricultural Budget will be and how it could better suit hill farmers.
My thoughts are that it seems to be a reasonably fair-minded document from the EU Commission. It would be how it will be interpreted at member state level will be where the real battle will be, like amongst the farm organisations. If it's implemented along the lines of a direct interpretation, I think all farmers will benefit, and hill farmers will benefit especially, because there is plenty in there for them in how the basic payment will be redistributed. And basically there's also going to be an eco scheme involved in Pillar 1, which will allow farmers in those areas to get a Pillar 1 payment, which possibly will cut out a lot of cost, like we'll say from a planner's perspective and stuff like that. So it could be implemented in a very, very simple and direct way. I think the eco scheme has the possibility of addressing, we'll say, the benefits of permanent grassland, and a lot of the hill farmers will benefit from that as well.
Great. And then Pillar 2, rural development, what's your thoughts on that?
Pillar 2, rural development, I believe myself that the eco scheme in Pillar 1 will has enough in it, like we'll say, for a Pillar 1 scheme to cover both the agri-environment section of what is already in Pillar 2 at the moment, which is the GLOS scheme, and that Pillar 2 payments maybe could be directed towards maybe animal welfare type schemes. You'd have no duplication of schemes then, like we'll say. You'd pay all your agri-environment scheme in your Pillar 1 eco scheme, and then develop other schemes, like we'll say, from an animal welfare perspective, we'll say either on beef and sheep. Beef or sheep, or beef and sheep.
And for hill farmers, I suppose INHFA represents the Natura and hill farmers across the country. What's the biggest change coming down the line for them in the next CAP, do you think, with the current proposal?
Well, there is provision in Pillar 2 for a dedicated payment for Natura areas that is allowed for in Pillar 2. That would be a payment for mandatory requirements that are imposed onto farmers. I think we'll say that this organisation would definitely be looking for some recognition in that area. For there's 39 articles requiring consent on any farmer that's farming in Natura areas. I think the average that will affect farmers is roughly around 25. Now, those things have administrative burdens attached to that. You have to apply, ask for permission to do just the most simplest farming tests, such as fencing, drainage, that type of work. And we believe that there is something in there, and we are going to be possibly pursuing that, and maybe establishing a campaign looking to have that thing recognised, have those Natura designations recognised, and the burdens that they do impose on farmers. There is an opportunity there, maybe to look again at the commonage framework plans to reduce any of the restrictions that are on farmers in those areas and allow them the freedom to farm and evolve, the same as farming is evolving in other parts of the country, and not to have farming in those areas become like a static industry where they cannot evolve with current trends and with modernisation and stuff like that. So to relook at the commonage framework plans, which evolved into a commonage management plan under GLOS, but placed severe stocking restrictions on farmers, that they couldn't advance and progress their business. And I believe that lifting those restrictions would make it much more attractive for young farmers to come into the system as well.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Now, beef farmers are often accused of being slightly less on the ball than their dairy counterparts. However, Teagasc are holding an event in Grange, County Meath, on the 26th of June that promises to put productive beef farming to the fore. Our specialist beef editor, Adam Woods, spoke to Aidan Murray about what farmers could expect from the day.
Well, I suppose, look, anybody in the beef sector knows the value of having the sort of research and independence of Teagasc Grange. And I suppose we're reaching a stage where things are getting challenging. We're looking at implications of Brexit, a new CAP reform, and we basically, our business is knowledge transfer, and we want to get out sort of the latest technologies that are central and sort of underpinning the future profitability of the beef sector in the country. And we have a lot of technology out there relating to grassland management, breeding, animal nutrition, and sort of future-proofing farms.
So people attending on the day, I suppose there's 4 main stands as part of the day. What can we expect to see covered at those 4 main technical stands? Okay, well, when people arrive, the first thing that they're going to have to walk through is a farm infrastructure village, which basically shows you the actual setup in terms of setting paddocks in place, drainage systems, roadways, fencing, soil fertility and that. And then you're into the 4 main speaking stands, which there'll be 10 minutes of a talk at each stand and 5 minutes a question. The first one will be on suckler calf to beef. And we look at what are the key profit drivers in terms of the production systems on a sort of a suckler to weanling, suckler to beef system, and that in terms of calving date, grassland management, breeding efficiency and that. Then the second stand we're looking at dairy calf to beef. Again, looking at the key profit drivers in the sort of the dairy beef side, which has obviously been growing in the last few years on foot of the expansion of the dairy herd. Then we have a third stand, which is on high animal performance, whereby we look at the replacement and terminal indexes with Donna Berry, and we look at the issues in terms of what's key in driving profitability there. What can we do to improve genetic gain? We're looking at 2-year-old calving. We're looking to improve AI usage in the suckler herd. And then we have a fourth speaking stand, which is on grassland management, where we go through the main issues of soil fertility, grazing management and infrastructure, and the role of clover in grassland swards. So after that, I suppose the main technical stands, there's a huge amount of technology villages, and really I suppose farmers won't get to see all the open day in terms of visiting every village, but give us an example of some of the villages that people could visit on the day. Well, our flagship programme with regard to grassland in 2018 is the Grass 10 programme, which has been rolled out across all the sectors in 2018, but we're looking at having a very good grazing demonstration. People will be able to look at sort of pasture-based Ireland, and the impact of grass in terms of profitability. We've, again, in conjunction with yourselves in the Farmers Journal and the meat industry, we've got the Better Farm programme, where we'll be looking at sort of the importance of farm planning and monitoring performance and hitting targets. Then you've got the dairy calf to beef. Again, we've ongoing research here in Grange, a new demonstration herd set up. You've got the Green Acres joint programme, and you've also got work going on in Johnstown Castle. We've got the Health and Breeding Village, which looks at looks at breeding efficiency, looks at issues with regard to health in terms of bovine respiratory disease, Johne's, parasite control. You've got another village on feeding and meat quality, where we're looking at sort of producing high quality forage, ration formulation, and then factors that actually affect meat quality, which is important to the customer. And then we've got a section on the sustainability and the environment. We're looking at nutrient efficiency, water quality, etc., and our carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions. And then we've got the section on education, where a number of young people, what's the various pathways they can take and what courses are available throughout the country in terms of colleges and that for people that are interested in doing that.
Stay tuned, because still to come we have a report on new bee-friendly technology and farmers embracing new water quality practices.
Straw prices set to spiral. In this week's Irish Farmers Journal, the late spring and acreage reductions will result in 1 million fewer bales of straw this winter. Live exports hampered by red tape as buyers face visa delays. Corruption allegations. Former IFA Deputy President slams Department of Agriculture over the conduct of one of its officials. We reveal how satellites monitor your farm. Plus, don't miss our 22-page tractor special detailing the specs and prices of over 600 tractor models. Inside this week's Irish Farmers Journal, on sale today.
Now, apparently, water quality is the first thing that the EU will look at in the next nitrates review. So, farmers are increasingly aware of the need to improve the country's water quality and promote agriculture as clean. Our correspondent Tommy Moyles spoke to Dermot Leahy, who is working in Timolee, County Cork, on the Teagasc Agricultural Catchment Programme there.
The catchment area, it's a water quality monitoring programme. Within Timolee, we have a 7.5 square kilometre area, mainly grassland, 85% grassland, that we're measuring runoff nitrogen and phosphorus into surface water, i.e. streams, and groundwater, so down the wells beyond the bedrock.
How long is this going on since?
It's gone about 9 years. The programme was sort of envisaged about 10 years ago and got off the ground 9 years ago.
So you were saying there during the day that you collect data every 10 minutes?
Yeah, so this on the stream water and the surface water, we have an automated sampling machine that collects the sample every 10 minutes and tests it for nitrogen, phosphorus, conductivity, temperature and total organic carbon every 10 minutes.
What's been the buy-in like from farmers along the project? Was there any bit of nervousness when you tried to set it up?
I suppose there are 6 catchments around the country and there was pretty good buy-in in all of them, but there was issues in some parts of the country, but there was particularly good buy-in down the Timolee catchment. I suppose there's water quality issues all over the country, but locally for them, agriculture was getting the blame for some of the issues in the local bays and stuff like that, and some of the farmers were... we had some open meetings and some of the farmers were like, that's fine, let's put some numbers on it. This might either back us or blame us, but let's put some numbers and see what's actually happening. So from that point of view, from the initiation, there was good buy-in. And then after that, just through hard work, we just... good contact with farmers and kind of just describing what we're doing and the win-win situations that we have, that we just kept that relationship going.
How many farmers are involved?
It kind of varies between land changing hands and that. So if you have one field in the catchment, you're still counted as a farmer who has all his land in the catchment. But I suppose you're averaging about 35 farmers generally. Yeah.
I suppose moving to a bigger picture, Timolee catchment is close to the sea and the estuary of the Argideen River. How aware is it something that farmers need to take more note of, that just because you live far inland doesn't mean that you're going to have an effect downstream?
Yeah, that's one thing we're looking at, especially when it comes to nitrogen. So nitrates have an effect in the estuary, as you say. That nitrogen can come from 1 mile away, it can come from 100 miles away. So as soon as nitrogen hits the water, it's travelling towards a destination, quite generally a bay or an estuary. And when it hits that estuary, it's having an effect. So it's feeding into the algae and other plant growth there and leading to blooms, and you're having an effect. Once nitrogen's hitting the water, it's having an effect.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.
There are growing fears that pleasant buzzing in the garden is dying down as bees are reportedly in decline. New EU pesticide bans have been put in place to protect the pollinators, but some people are also working on technology to help bees. Emmett Landy of the News team spoke to Padraig Whelan and Fiona Edwards-Murphy of Apis Protect to find out more.
Some forms of agriculture, are no use for bees, like grassland, unless it's got things like clover in it and other flowers. Pure grass on its own isn't much use to honeybees, and other pollinators would be in the same situation. But one of the biggest problems with honeybees at the moment is an introduced tick, which is about the size of if you were a honeybee now, this would be the size of about a grapefruit on the side of your body. And this tick, what it does is it sucks the blood of the bees, and as it moves from one bee to the other, it transmits diseases. So, for example, in a typical human population, somebody's going to have the common cold, and this common cold can get spread by people shaking hands, or sneezing and things like that. Well, this tick carries bee diseases from one to the other, and that is a major problem. And among beekeepers, they would always regard that as a major one. So you've got habitat loss, you've got the varroa mite. Also, in some cases, their food, if you like, their nectar and pollen is becoming so monotonous that people are concerned about that. And then there's this kind of use of chemicals as well, and there's more and more information showing that, some of these chemicals, act in very different ways. Some of them very similar, some of them act in one way, another similar one would act in a different way, and they can affect things like the way a bee finds its way about, the way a bee finds its way home, things like the way a bee copes with disease, the way bees cope with other toxins in the environment, are all conditioned by that. And even, the treatments for this tick that's available or in bees, that also has been found to affect the bee's ability to cope with other stresses in the environment. So it's a general environmental stress. But I think if you talk to beekeepers, the biggest problem they talk about is the tick and the diseases it transmits.
The Internet of Things is a concept that's all about bringing sensors into the real world and using those sensors to help us understand the world around us and improve the way that we work and live and do everything.
And that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. And remember, you can stay in touch with all the farm news on Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat and Instagram. The sound engineer this week was Ferdia Mooney, and I'm Hannah Quinn Mulligan.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.